Welcome to this week's edition of Virtual High School Media Day. I'm Andy Conte, Director of the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh. Today we have a really special show that's lined up focusing on a group of high school students that when the pandemic hit their hometown, they decided to do something special. They ended up putting out their own newspaper, taking their high school newspaper and making it about the community. And so when we heard about these students and what they were doing, we wanted to reach out to them and get them on to share their story. And so I want to start out by bringing in Editor-in-Chief Sam Shelenberger. Sam, welcome.
Hi, I'm Sam Shelenberger. I am the Editor-in-Chief of the Panther Press, Saegertown High School's newspaper. I've been in journalism for about 3 years or so. I've been a staff writer and broadcast director and now Editor-in-Chief. So I've been really excited to be working still outside of school, trying to write the first rough draft of history with everything that has been going on and affecting our community.
Yeah, there's no doubt about the fact that that's what you guys are doing, right? This is actually a moment in history. I'm going to bring in your partner in crime, Nick Archacki, who is the managing editor. Nick, welcome.
Thanks for having me. So, like you said, I'm Sam's partner in crime, managing editor of the Panther Press. I've been in journalism the same time as Sam. We've both been in it for 3 years. I started off as staff writer and then was a news editor last year, and now taking the role of managing editor.
And now let me move over to your teacher, Stacey Hetrick, who makes all this possible, I guess. Stacey, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. It's really a pleasure to be here today. We are a small rural school in northwestern Pennsylvania. We graduate about 80 students per year. This is my 14th year as a journalism advisor. We belong to the Pennsylvania School Press Association. I'm on the executive board of the Press Association. The kids, every year they work very hard to tell the stories of our community, and what they've pulled together to do during the shutdown has been fairly remarkable. So we're excited to be able to talk about that today.
Well, it sounds like you have a great program there. I'm definitely interested in knowing how this all came together. You all were featured in the Society of Professional Journalists magazine, Quill magazine. They reached out to you. Sam, it sounded like whenever the pandemic hit your high school and wrecked your senior year that you weren't going to just take it sitting down. What happened?
Well, it was kind of an interesting thing that happened. We started off with, like, the moment I got it from a text from a friend. They're like, hey, school's closed for 2 weeks. So I tried texting Mrs. Hetrick and say, like, hey, should we post something about this? What's going on? She didn't respond because she was busy. So I went ahead and we posted about like how schools are shut down. And the next day, Mrs. Hetrick and I met and we discussed about how we're going to try to make it through and still do journalism outside of school. So we lined up that we are going to be doing the Saegertown Shutdown Stories, which is just sort of like a little mini diary of what everybody's been doing on their days off. Because I mean, whenever you just randomly get hit with 2 weeks off of school, nobody knows what they're going to be doing.
Stacey, I'm curious from your perspective as the teacher, did it seem possible right away, or were you like, no, we're shut down? Because I think a lot of teachers would have said, well, school's out, we're not doing the newspaper, and instead you let them do it. So what did that discussion, how did that go?
Well, everybody started texting everybody, and we knew the building was going to be locked down on Monday. And I said to Sam, come to my house at 9 a.m. and let's figure this out. And that was on the 14th of March. And we had an issue scheduled to come out on the 20th. So we had stories, in process that were for the issue. So he and I sat down and we said, look, let's go to the school and get the journalism computer. Let's bring it down to my house. We can do layout from there. We didn't know that we wouldn't be allowed to see each other at all. So then we created the thing like, ooh, we could do shutdown stories. Wait, we could call it Saegertown Shutdown Stories. So by the time he left my house that day, we had gone to the school, got everything that we needed, created the document for the shutdown stories, and started signing kids up to do them. And the first shutdown story was published that Monday. So that's how fat, like the kids were in. Once, I just said, hey, troops. And he said, hey, troops, we're going to do this. They were in. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just like a real newsroom. I mean, it's very impressive. Is there, Stacey, is there a local newspaper in your community, or are people relying on the student newspaper for information?
Yeah, so we have a very good local newspaper, the Meadville Tribune, and we've actually been in a school partnership with them for 14 years. And fascinatingly, they reached out once they saw the shutdown stories, and they've been publishing them. So today they picked a third one of our shutdown stories to publish, and it was on A3 of the paper. So that's been pretty exciting for, people that have contributed now to have their work go out to 16,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. It's really great to get that kind of feedback and recognition. Nick, I'm curious from the perspective of the managing editor, you're really in charge of running the newsroom. What are you telling your reporters? How are they able to tell these stories? Are you telling them to go out in public, or what do you do to keep them safe?
Well, it's not necessarily just me. It's kind of a partnership with myself, Mrs. Hetrick, and Sam. We're kind of the bigger role models in the classroom. So we've actually used an app called Slack, and we've used that to, you could say, plan out our future stories and what we're going to do. We've also got a text message group chat. And we've been able to contact each other there, but we've all worked together from J3s down to J1s, and we've been able to post stories, and it's worked out really well during this time.
What's a J3 and a J1?
J3 means you've been in journalism for 3 years, and a J1 means you've been in journalism for 1 year.
Okay. And so how are you keeping your reporters safe? How are they able to tell stories and remain at a safe distance from the people they're interviewing?
Well, I mean, we've just kind of, stayed at home and contacted people over our phones. I actually did a story of my mom, and she's a nurse at the Meadville Medical Center, and I was able to write a story about her being a nurse during this time. And that was really cool to do. And then there's been people that I know that have written stories like from the first person aspect and, writing their personal experiences. But I think we've all kind of taken action on staying home, being quarantined, trying to, stay away from the ones that might be more vulnerable to the situation. But I think we've all kind of taken our part in being safe and just staying home.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, that's just like journalists everywhere. You've got to make that choice between, how do you go out and cover something, but how do you also remain safe while you do it? So, Sam, I'm curious from your perspective, how many students do you have involved in this project? I understand that some of them are alumni that were used to be involved in the newspaper and they came back to help out. And then how young did they go on the other end?
So this year is actually the first year that we started letting freshmen into our journalism program. Previously, it was 10th through 12th grade. This year, we started letting 9th graders in, and we have a class of 26, I believe. So, and primarily most of them are freshmen. So currently, what we've tried to contact as many as possible to get them into it. But I think we've had at least 10 people that have been active through all of this. Plus, we've been getting in contact with Panther Press alumni who have been writing stories for us and other various members of the community who will write for us.
That's terrific. I mean, it's just, to have a newsroom of 26 people, even if some of them are first year students in high school, that's still a big deal. That's great. Tell us about some of the stories that you've had so far. What have you learned about your community? Is there anything that surprised you?
I think one of the most interesting ones that I've written, well, I've only written one. I have a few others in the works, but the most interesting one I've read so far was probably the first one that I wrote, which was the Monday after everything shut down. I ended up having a small conversation with one of my friends that I barely ever talked to about it. And she was telling me about how she had a kind of little diary made up that she was throwing a whole bunch of different photos and stuff because she just wanted to document how everything's been going. So I talked with her for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then the next day I got up and used that short little text message conversation we had to piece together a story about it, which I think that was probably one of the cooler ones that I've read that we've put out so far.
Yeah, that's great. How about from your perspective, Nick? Did you have a favorite story?
The one that I've enjoyed the most was the one I wrote about my mom being a nurse. And she had a lot of really good advice, just how to be safe, how everyone should be safe. And I also read another story about our Saegertown exit, which hasn't been posted yet, but we'll eventually get to that. But the one about my mom has been my favorite one we've done so far.
Stacey, I'm curious from your perspective, you mentioned how the work that the students are doing, some of it's actually showing up in the local newspaper. What is it that the students bring to their reporting and to their coverage that maybe a professional journalist wouldn't? Is there another perspective or something special that they bring to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell them this all the time. There's 450 stories at Saegertown High School, and we can tell them endlessly and endlessly. And in the document that we created for the shutdown stories, there's actually a separate document with angles, and they're endless. Like the things that we can talk about with regard to what is happening right now. The one that we posted this morning was actually written by a student who's not even on the staff. She just reached out. One of our teachers is using this time off to like work on a thing called a moto trials track in her yard. And I didn't even know what that was, let alone that one of my colleagues was doing that. So it's those sorts of things that are really fascinating, that you're just finding out everybody is dealing with this differently. The other real fringe benefit of working like this has been the one-on-one contact with senior staff and people who are writing. We're communicating through the Slack channel and Google Docs and telephone. Like I've been on the phone having conversations while the document's open. We need to add things so the kids can edit and stuff and get them to where they are ready to be published. I think it's much more probably personal attention than they've had from us, as far as learning writers, than they did when we were in the classroom, because we have the time to do that now.
Well, that is the interesting thing, right? Now you're no longer in school, but you're still teaching and having an impact in a totally different way. And I think that's what's happening all across the country. Really, people are innovating and figuring out different ways to do things than they normally would. I'm curious, do you have any advice for other teachers when they look at what you've been able to accomplish and wonder how they might be able to do it for themselves?
My advice is that you get your senior leadership, you cast out the filaments to them. It might take some subtle bullying, but they'll be okay. And just keep reminding them that if we don't tell these stories, they're not going to be told. And particularly for our seniors, they're going to I keep putting messages on the Google Classroom and the Slack. You're going to be so proud that you were part of this series, because we have a senior issue coming up, and that we need to start planning for. And I know that they know that, we need to keep moving forward. So my advice is, even if your kids aren't reaching back exactly as much as you think they should, they're thinking about it. Just keep pushing out, getting those filaments and get something published. Just publish something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great advice. Just do it, right? I mean, because there's so many times when in situations like this we think, well, maybe we should wait, maybe we shouldn't do it, maybe there's some uncertainty around it. And what I love about it is that you all just decided to do it, and then you did it. You didn't waste any time, like you mentioned that one morning you got together and figured it all out and just went and got the computers and did it. I'm wondering, Sam, how much bullying was involved? What did it take to get you involved, or was it something where you were excited about it from day one?
Well, I was one of the first people to be out trying to contact everybody. Since, like I said, Mrs. Hetrick was busy. She didn't have her phone on her. So, like that night, we got up, we set up our communication network, kind of, and we started like getting in contact with each other. And since then, like I sort of set it up and it's been self sustaining. I've been trying to edit here and there, but I've been busy with a whole bunch of other stuff myself. So I haven't been as involved as I'd like. However, I have been planning like different background projects that I don't think Mrs. Hetrick knows about yet. So there's a few surprises that I have, but it's been like she's been trying to bully me to go towards the Saegertown Shutdown Stories, but I have other stuff that I've been working on that I think she'll like. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, and Nick, I guess I'm wondering from your perspective, what was the reaction from students? Did people just automatically want to do this, or did it require you all getting organized and saying like, we're going to have to do this, and you've got to come along, and you don't want to miss out on it? What was sort of the vibe?
I think from the beginning, I believe the first day we heard about it, me and Sam were like kind of the ones that were like, okay, we got to do something. And when I first found out about it, I texted Mrs. Hetrick and I was like, well, what do we do now? So, that's kind of what we do as journalists, because we don't really know what was going to happen, and we got to ask questions and we got to find out answers.
So Nick, a lot of other high school students are going to be watching this video, and I'm just curious what your message to them would be when it comes to something like this.
Well, K through 11th grade, I'm sure they're enjoying this time off because they know they have another year left. Like they're saying to themselves, we don't have to do any of our state tests or anything like that. So they're probably having the time of their lives. But for us seniors, this is our last rodeo. It's been pretty difficult for us. So, just kind of, you know, embrace every moment because you don't know if it's going to be your last or not in the high school or anything like that. This has been pretty tough.
Well, Sammy, I wonder how you feel about that. This is certainly isn't the way you expected to finish your senior year, for all the reasons that Nick just described. And yet at the same time, you're going to end the year in an unexpected way and with something special, memories that you couldn't have imagined even just a few weeks ago. So how does that feel?
I've been thinking about it in multiple different ways here because, like Nick said, there's a lot of stuff that us seniors have been looking forward to between like all of our, I mean, at this point, we don't even know if we're having a graduation. So there's a lot of stuff that we were looking forward to just because we're seniors, but also like I was going to be going to state journalism competition and an awards ceremony and a whole bunch of other stuff that we had planned in the last few months. I was really looking forward to. And obviously, for obvious reasons, everything's been sort of twisted around. So it's been weird. There's been some tough times with it, but I think that definitely looking back, whenever I grow up, I'll go, hey, that was pretty cool that I was a part of that.
Yeah, Stacey, I'm going to give you the last word. I just wonder, from your perspective, you've seen so many students come and go over the years, and you've had so many different situations, I'm sure, in the classroom. Is there anything that you want to tell these guys about the experience they're having and what it might mean for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, so I just want my staff to know how incredibly proud I am of them and how stubborn we're going to continue to be. We've said we're going to publish a new story every day, and that is really our goal, is to just keep telling those stories. And for the younger staff members that are, that are thinking, "Ooh, I really don't know how to do that," they need to remember that the senior leadership is here to help them, and you can learn a heck of a lot about your craft of journalism in a situation like this. So, my advice to any student journalists out there is tell the stories, because this is an unprecedented moment that we're living through. And I'm hopeful that you'll see a collection of Saegertown Shutdown stories. We have 15 or 16 published already, and we're not stopping until they make me stop. So a great congratulations to the staff of the Panther Press, and thank you for giving us a platform just to talk about what our process has been.
Well, congratulations to all three of you, Sam, Nick, and Stacey. I think it's really terrific, the work you've been doing, and congratulations to your whole staff, everyone who's been contributing who couldn't be with us today. Thanks for doing this. I think it's an inspiration to certainly us at the Center for Media Innovation. When we saw what you were doing, we were really impressed by it, and we were so excited that you wanted to come on and talk about it. And I think it's going to be an inspiration for a lot of other high school students all across Pennsylvania and across the country. It's really an important thing that you're doing, and we're so glad that you wanted to do it and that you were willing to share it. So thank you for being on today's show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to conclude this week's Virtual High School Media Day. Please be sure to check in next Friday for the next edition. Thank you.